Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Mind Your Nest. I'm your host, Jennifer Rosen. And as always, I have a tremendously smart and bubbly and personable guest in studio today that I'm really grateful to have met. Several months ago, I joined an organization called ESRN, and it stands for Elder Services Resource Network. And I went to a small group luncheon at 5 Stars Senior Community, and we started talking about our love and adoration for the older population, and the rest, they say, is history. I think I've said that way too many times, but it works. So without further ado, Nicole Miller, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
I'm very excited.
All right, so I'm going to pass it on to you and tell us about yourself, like where you came from, how you got to Florida, and doing what you're doing and your passion behind it.
Awesome. Yeah, I am Florida born and raised, grew up here my whole life, went to college in St. Louis at WashU, was destined to be a doctor, and that was the goal, and that's what I thought was my goal, and had family that was living vicariously through me, and so I lived that for a couple of years, and I realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I ended up in business school and just figured nothing really struck me of interest. I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to be in finance. I just did marketing and accounting as a major. And when I left college, I was presented with an offer to be a buyer in Bloomingdale's. And then I was also presented with an offer to be an assistant store manager at Target. And of course, coming from family that wanted you to be a doctor or a lawyer, that was not that great. And so I would not trade that decision in for the world. And I got placed in a store. I had an amazing team and an amazing mentorship team of leaders I worked with. And that defined how I see my future now and the route it ended up taking me and the excellence that I have. And my boss at the time is the reason I am where I am today and what she instilled in me. So did that for a little bit, got tired of retail, ended up going into corporate and worked for an online retailer as a buyer and inventory planning manager. And so I was responsible for over 10,000 SKUs, finding new products and managing the inventory. And I did that for about 4 years. And I was always the type of person that things had to make sense for me. I couldn't continue seeing myself working for others. And just the environments I was in, there was an itch. And so I had mentioned to my husband, basically put me in a position where he said, listen, quit. Because where I was at was very stressful. It was too much. And it wasn't really giving me what I needed. And my mom told me, I don't see you working for people. Like, you should go into your own business. I think you'd be great at real estate. And at the time I said, are you out of your mind? I am not a salesperson, because let's be real. Our industry has done a great job at making us look right above car salesmen, right? Yeah. As far as trustworthiness. And our industry is about sales and scripts. And that was not me. I'm very real. And so I told my mom, I'm like, that's not. And she said to me, whatever, you know what? I see this. And I think what you'll do is you'll do it your way. And so I said, fine, Mom, I'll get my license. And that was 10 years ago, exactly last week. The last month has been a really weird, sobering moment for me to say, okay, that's what happened. And the journey has been amazing. And I got into it and was very blessed and grateful that I had the opportunity to get into it full time. And we lived very meagerly on my husband's salary, and I was able to really put myself in it. I started and accidentally fell into the 55 plus market. And so my aunt, God bless her, and I love her to death, had lived in a 55 plus community. And she was kind of like the mama duck. She was the younger of them. And she has so many friends in the community where she helped a lot of the older seniors when the children were not there. And she was like overseeing a lot. And ultimately, some of those people passed. And the family would say, we need to sell the apartment. And she said, my niece. One thing that I find very important in our industry and non-negotiable is when you start, there's no profession you can have out there that you can literally get licensed in 60 hours and then just start to be able to go out there and wreak havoc. You have a lot in your responsibility. So I found it very important when I started that I needed to have a mentor. And we worked deals together. and I didn't make a full commission. And I
You and your aunt did?
My mentor. No,
Oh,
my
your
aunt wasn't
mentor.
licensed. And I also didn't think that I was at the point where you should trust me. I'm brand new, right? And that's just how I am. So I worked with another amazing agent on many deals until I felt comfortable doing it myself. And
Wow.
so that was one thing that I do now in my business too. I have a mentor at any point in time. I've mentored about 6 agents over the years. And basically, I think that's really important because you're going out there, you're helping people buy and sell. These are the largest assets. The biggest mistakes could be made with a purchase.
Yeah.
And people don't realize how important and what our role really is and should be. So I did that, and then it just was a whirlwind of condos, 55 plus. Next thing you knew, they gave me their friend, and they gave me their this. And it was a running joke in my old office that I was like the old lady realtor. And because she did condos and she worked with seniors. So I fell into it, and then just had, after a few years doing a good amount of business. I think I was doing maybe 20 to 30 units of just these condos.
On a monthly basis or?
Like yearly, 30 units yearly in these condos. And the thing is that they're not easy. There's a lot of things, if you do them right, you need to cover all your bases. And so there's a lot of work involved, and it was a lot. And so I didn't think about the senior market intentionally. I just knew that was the clients I enjoyed. And I did a clean out to close. So I ended up adopting extra services because a lot of the sellers I work with have either passed away and I'm working with their children, or have diminished capacity and I'm working with their POA or their guardian, or they now are going from a condo back up north because they can't live alone, but they can't do a senior community because they can't afford it. Or maybe they are going into a senior community or a memory care community. And so those are primarily a lot of my clients, and a lot of the sellers' kids don't live here. So you'll have the son and the daughter. Sometimes one is not as involved as the other, and sometimes they're all involved. And so I help them do everything. So if someone were to have passed away and I'm helping with a probate, I've had situations where they can't make it down. And I've literally Zoomed them with my phone and said, you said you wanted X, Y, and Z. All right, these are all the photo albums. And I've literally had a jewelry box where he said, no, I trust you. Just take everything out, put it in a bag. And I had it shipped and insured and everything. And I sent everything to them. Sometimes they don't even have to come. And sometimes sellers are like, listen, I've done a lot of hoarder situations, unfortunately, and they'll say, whatever, just sell it as is or whatever we need to do. So I offer a level of concierge service to those clients that they won't get elsewhere because I've built that team of people. And even to the cleaning situation, if I need the unit to be cleaned, it's easy. If you want, I can pay, you pay me back, you send me a check. Sometimes my clients can do Zelle, they sell it. And it's just a very smooth, fluid, like, hey, she just left. Send her this money. Okay,
Right.
Great, done. You don't have to worry at all. And so I've built that over the years and then realized that was where my heart really was, became a little more intentional. So everywhere you'll find me at my marketing, everything is all around that. I only network, like we met at ESRN, I only network in those spaces. And that's really where my passion is.
And where did that come from? Do you consider yourself an old soul, old school,
Yes.
old fashioned, all those things? I've said numerous times that I feel like I coulda, shoulda, woulda been born in my parents' or grandparents' generation. I love talking to people in person over texting or phone calls, not big into social media, although I've backpedaled into it after starting my business. I love listening to the stories. Like I remember growing up, wanting to spend time with my parents and their friends around the holidays or sitting and talking with my grandparents. I just love the authenticity and the realness and the humility of all of it. And, it's always interesting to find another person that has that same level of appreciation for this population. Were you like that growing up? Do you have any memories of that connection to the older population, like with your parents or your grandparents, that really started that alignment with that group? Or was it not until you were older and out in the world?
Yeah, so I like what you said. I'm going to touch on that. Like, I was always an old soul, and I felt like I was also born in the wrong generation. It's funny because most of my friends are older than I am. And I've always had an appreciation for the simplicity and the richness that was in that decade, in those decades, and like how much has changed and the appreciation that existed. And it's hard for me to explain, but I think you understand. It was a different time. And the stories And I've learned so much from my seniors, so much. And and I've also been fixed in a way by a lot of that, because those are my clients that did come from a different generation that'll tell me, no, don't call me. It's Sunday. Like, it's family time. That doesn't exist anymore. I had a good relationship with my grandma that lived with us. And I think maybe in a way, like really thinking about it, I didn't have as close of a relationship with all of them after I was super young, and they didn't live here, right? So I think that maybe I missed out, and having that in my life now is maybe compensating for what might have not had been around.
Completely agree with that. Growing up, my dad made a strict rule that we were not getting in the car and schlepping to back and forth between one grandparents and the next on Sundays, because he was an accountant who had an extraordinarily busy schedule, and he didn't want his family life to be like that on Sundays. Plus, I came from a huge sports family, and he wanted to be on the couch watching the Bears and enjoying his Sunday or playing golf, which he typically did on Saturdays. In any event, his deal was, you're more than welcome to come to the house and we'll have dinner every Sunday if you want. And I vividly remember those Sundays. And my mom's parents, my Grandma Bertie, my Grandpa Joe, oh my gosh, not to their face, but I call them the Weebles because they were so cute and adorable. And I think they were both under 5 feet tall. And they drove their Chevy Caprice, and my grandpa could never park in alignment in front of the house. So he would park and his car would be in the middle of the street. And then my mom or dad would have to go out and straighten the car, but they were so cute. Very serious, like extraordinarily serious people. And then my dad's parents, my Grandpa Sam and Grandma Sil, were like the complete opposite. And my Grandma Sil was my favorite grandparent. I loved her more than anything. She would give me Harold Robbins books when I was 14, and she said, hide it under your bed. And I'm like, I would just flip through the pages. I'm like, Grandma, have you read this book? She's like, shh, put it under the bed. And they were just, I don't know, full of life and zest. And my Grandpa Sam and Grandma Sil, they didn't have it easy. My uncle, my dad's older brother, was born mentally retarded. He didn't get enough oxygen to his brain. And that was a really troubling, challenging, beyond measure life for them. But you would never know it when you were in the presence of either one of them. And I remember my Grandma Sil passed away my sophomore year in college at University of Maryland. I got the phone call, and I tried my best to make her matzo ball soup that night. And I was flying home the next day for her funeral. And I was just so beyond devastated and sad because I didn't stay connected with her. And I remember flying in, and the day of her funeral, I had this pink sweater, 2-piece outfit, like a crocheted pink sweater top and pink sweater skirt. And I can't remember what color shoes I wore, but I wore that. And I remember people were coming up to my parents like, what is your daughter wearing? She's wearing pink to a funeral. And my dad's like, it's fine. She's dead. It doesn't matter. This was helping her grieve. I agree. I think back to at least what I can remember, like the engagement that I had with my grandparents, and then when it stopped, and then the regret that I didn't stay connected enough. I don't really believe in having any regrets in life, but I do miss that connection and those conversations with my grandma. They were just so special, and I can still hear her laugh, which is a beautiful thing. And like you said, I do believe that those losses have helped me persevere and move forward and have these real, authentic relationships with this demographic.
Yeah.
And just sitting and listening, and not sitting to listen to respond, but really just listening.
As you were talking, I was reflecting. So my family on my mom's side is one of 4, and she's the baby later. Mm-hmm. My dad as well later. So my cousins are actually like my mom's age. And so my cousin's kids are my age. So therefore, my point being, my grandparents were much older for me in my life than they were for my other cousins. Mm-hmm. I think that I didn't have that opportunity as an adult or even as a young adult to be able to have, because unfortunately, even with my grandparents, my grandfather had Alzheimer's for many years, even when I was young to college age. So I think that part of it, even my husband will joke sometimes, I'll have my listing appointments and he's like, you've been gone for 4 hours. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. I knew her life. I knew everything. She sent me off with a skirt that she loved that she didn't want to wear anymore. And I feel like I've had all these grandparents, because in the years that you would appreciate that, it's different when you're a kid. And in the years that you can appreciate and understand the stories and really be able to like take that in, I didn't have that because I had much older grandparents and much younger parents, like the generation gap that happened with us. So yeah, just that kind of was coming through my head as you were talking.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. I mean, even with my kids, Noah's 24, Rachel's 22, and we have one grandparent. They have one grandparent left, which is my mother. My dad passed away a little over 8 years ago, and my ex-husband's parents have been gone for many years. I wish it were different. You can't hope and pray. I guess you can hope and pray that your grandparents and everybody in your family lives until infinity, but the reality is that that's not how life works. But I'm grateful that they have those memories, even though they ended because they passed away for a myriad of reasons. Congestive heart failure, cancer, and other ailments. But at least my kids are just like me, and they're old-fashioned and have old souls, and they truly appreciate those memories, and that have helped them kind of move through life, those really grounding traditions and feelings and thoughts and everything like that. I know I've done a few things right with my children, and I'm blessed that passing that down is one of them. Okay, so you have kids, but I think they're much younger than mine, obviously, because you and I are 20 years apart. Do you feel that your kids have that same feeling about older people that you do, in a way that you can at least look at or observe when you're together with your family?
So one thing I was thinking about now is that my grandparents were like snowbirds. They came down, and I've always been very big on family. So I remembered my husband, we would talk about being close to family. So he'd say, oh, I can get a job opportunity in whatever state. I'm like, we're not leaving. I've always been very big on being close to my family. My mom and dad live here. My husband's dad lives here. All my aunts and uncles live here, pretty much. Everyone migrated, like Florida story, right? New York to Florida. Everyone migrated here. So I can't see myself leaving here because that is so ingrained in me to have my family and be close. And so with my son, I have a son, he's going to be 8 next month. The relationship he has with his grandma and grandfather is very important for me to have them be that involved all the time and not just when they came to visit and things like that. I think he has a lot of respect for that generation, and he's got a lot of really close relationships with them. Like my aunt, him and my aunt are like best buddies. He literally taught her how to play games on an iPad and fishdom. So the two of them play fishdom, and it's hysterical because I didn't realize how into it she was.
I love that.
He literally is like coaching her on the iPad, and he's like, "Mom, I need your phone, so I'm going to call Tatanik." And she's like, listen, you have to show me the FaceTime. Let me see what you're looking at. Let me see your screen. Okay, no, you can't push that one. And I'm like literally sitting there, and it's hysterical. And then he reflects to me, he's like, she's doing a really good job.
Oh my gosh!
And it's just so funny because like it's nice to have and I on that note, no one has ever watched my son that was not one of my family members,
Really?
My mom or my aunt. Nobody has ever watched. I've never had a need for a babysitter. And that's like crazy to think. But like I've been blessed to have them, and he's been blessed to have. He goes to Safta's house, just the MO. That's
I love
it.
that. First of all, I'm Jewish. Obviously, I think we've talked about it. I'm wearing a Jewish star. You're wearing your Hamsa. I have one of my grandmas at my house that I got after both my grandparents passed away. So I do know how important being Jewish is to you, and as well as the terminology that you use so naturally describing your relationships, which I really think is beautiful. I've talked a lot here and some other networking places about my love for Yiddish and the joys of Yiddish, and using it when I worked at the synagogue for over 8 years with the older population, and some of my favorite Yiddish terms. One of my favorites that I learned that I really had no idea what it meant, but it really is one of my favorites, is Fabis and Apunim, which I know what punim is, but there was somebody that I worked with at the synagogue who was much older than me, and she would describe the woman that was the rabbi's assistant as having a fabis and a punim. And as I got used to what the word meant, every time I looked at this woman, I busted out laughing inside. So I have a book called The Joys of Yiddish by, I think it's Leo Rosenstein, maybe. It's a blue book. It's a white book with blue on it. And I took those tiny little tabs and I tabbed every single page that had the Yiddish word that I completely loved or I wanted to know more about. So I've talked about bringing it in to talk about on one of my podcasts because I do believe that it is going to be a lost language. And I think it's such a beautiful way to communicate.
My family is Middle Eastern. So and my husband's family is European Jewish. So they had that side. So I didn't grow up with Yiddish, but I think it's important to keep alive those traditions and appreciation for where you came from, whatever you are. That was very important for me, for my son. He does go to school where he does learn that. People need to stay connected to their history. Certain things are losing and going by the wayside. And so I made a commitment on my end that won't happen with my
I love it. I just love how naturally those words come off when you're talking. I try to say it and it's like I'm trying to speak a different language that I know nothing about. So I guess I can blame that on my parents too, right? Even though I went to Hebrew school and got bat mitzvah or whatever, it wasn't enough. But I'm a late learner. What can I say?
It was enough because it still has you engaged and still wanting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah. Right. And I love the older population, which is why I decided to leave the business world to start my own concierge bill payment service for the older population because they are such a vibrant population and they're so incredibly relevant in our lives. There are times that I've seen people treating them as an afterthought, discarding them, not letting them pass when you're walking down a sidewalk. I love when I see my son holding the door open for anybody, but especially the older population. I love seeing the couples holding hands and they're all dressed up. And I get up and get dressed every single day. I put my makeup on. I wear a dress every day now that I moved to Florida. And I definitely do that because I hear my mom chirping in my ear. I mean, my mother does not leave the house without her lipstick on. And probably your typical Jewish mother, she's Jennifer Faith, never leave the house without your eyeballs on because you never know who you might meet.
And my mom was always, my face on. I got to put my face.
Exactly. And I think maybe the 5 or 6 times in my whole life that I have left the house like that, I swear to God, she either called me or I ran into somebody. And I feel like my mother, telepathically knew that I did not have my makeup on. So when I went to college, I went to University of Maryland and I would get up and get dressed and go. And my roommate, Debbie, was like, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She rolled out of bed in 3 seconds, put her hair up in a ponytail, sweatpants, the whole 9 yards. She's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to class."
I think it's about how you show up in life, right?
Totally. I truly believe that.
And some people could say, "Oh, it's like vain that they did that." But I think it's also a reflection of how you end up showing up. I had a party this weekend and I did my hair and makeup and everything.
I saw that picture,
I haven't,
by the
right?
way.
And nobody recognized me, right? And so I think that we get really tied up in the day-to-day and the stresses and the rat race, and then you leave real quickly. And then it's not about necessarily the vanity of how you look, but that also sets your day up, right? When you're feeling good and you look good and that kind of, it starts your day. I think there's a book about make your bed first. I don't remember what the name of, but if you start on the right foot and have value for the presentation, not for what people think, but I think more so also how you end up showing up as a result of how you're feeling from that. You get really bogged down, especially in my business with a lot of clean out to close stuff. So I can be wearing sweatpants with my day to day. So it's a matter of slowing down. And I think that's what this generation has also really taught me,
right?
Is slowing down. They've seen everything too, right? They've been through everything. And what I love about it as well is they've been through everything from nothing to ice boxes in a refrigerator, to a refrigerator that makes you ice, to technology, this generation is the only generation that will have seen and lived and adapted through so much.
Right.
And I always think to myself, like, how did that look like from their perspective? Can you imagine being like, whoa, we didn't have this, we didn't have that, now we have this? I think that there's more of an appreciation for what has and what we have from that generation because they didn't.
Right.
That I think as a society, we have to have more of and be able to really reflect on how blessed we are at what has all happened in all of these years. And I love when I'm working with my seniors because their stories are so much simplicity, so much that we don't have anymore.
Right.
And they ground me. They ground me. My clean outs also ground me because I've learned, and I say this, some of my clients, I'm like, you have 18 wine glasses, my love. You have a 1-bedroom condo in Oriole. Why do you have 18 wine glasses? So over the years of me doing all these clean outs, I have also become cognizant of the stuff I accumulate and what it really means and what's really important. And people are very big on the big houses and all the random stuff that you can have. And I've seen over the years the things that have been accumulated that, guess what, when you die, they end up in the trash.
I know.
Your kids didn't want them, I promise you. They don't even want the condo.
Nobody wants your grandma's china.
Yeah, nobody does. And so I think that we hold on to these things as people for some sort of comfort. And then what, right? My goal is living minimalistically and traveling everywhere and just enjoying the experiences. And that's something I think that has gotten in my head because all of the experience I've had in this space as well.
Oh my gosh, there's so much there. I feel like we could talk for hours. I completely agree with everything that you have said. I've moved numerous times in my life with my children. I've been on my own. I just passed 21 years that I've been on my own raising my kids. They're 22 and 24 now, but I left when Rachel was 11 months old and Noah was 3. And I love purging. I think there's something really liberating and cleansing about it and appreciating what you had and then just moving forward and moving on. I'm not a big looking in the rearview mirror kind of a person, only to reference or reflect for a moment and rejoice in the memories, not so much keeping one arm in the past and then one arm in the future. I'm a really one day at a time kind of a person, probably being in the recovery community as an ex-wife and a mom of 2 addicts in recovery that have really helped keep me grounded and honest and as authentic as possible because nothing else really matters. I will say that after my dad passed away, it was really simple and easy, which somebody would say might sound heartless, but it was really just, let's get real, take the memories with you of what you want and the things that mean the most to you and let go of the rest. And I still have all of my dad's glasses. He had a pair of glasses for the computer. He had a pair of glasses for the Tribune. He had a pair of glasses for the Cubs games. He had a pair of glasses for golf. He had a pair of glasses for driving. And the cutest thing that I just love, and I will not get rid of his glasses, is he made a label on the glass case of each and every one of his glasses that said just that: Cubs game, computer, Chicago Tribune. So he knew which pair of glasses to grab.
So cute.
And I will never get rid of them because that was him.
But that was like, so that's one thing that you have, right?
Yeah.
So when I work with clients, that's a lot of the work I do with them is you don't need everything, right? So what are the things that defined your parents, like you're saying? What were the things that had something attached, a story or something? Right. And you get those couple of things and you need to be okay with getting rid of the rest and understanding that. And one thing my son taught me a couple of years ago, he said, maybe like about a year and a half ago, he said something that was super cool because I was telling him, Nate, we have so much stuff. Like you don't play with this anymore. Right. And then of course the kid's like, yes, I do. And I'm like, dude, it's like literally broken, first of all, and you don't play with it. So I said, we got to donate them. And he understood and I'm going to give it to kids who need it and my stuffies. And he said, you know what, mommy, can you take a picture of me with everything so that even though I don't have it, I have a picture of me with it? And I thought that was super cool. And I'm like, yo, this kid's onto something. Yep. Like, so what can you do, right? You can take a picture with things that may have had meaning. And then now you have this memory encapsulated in a photo. Yep. And the item itself really is not going to do anything if you had it or not, right? So we literally went through and he had like artwork and he had toys, and here he is with his goofy smile holding it. So I can take that, go on a site and put all the pictures in an album of Nate with all his random shit. Right. And the things that we keep elicit memories, but the item itself is not what's eliciting the memory. Right. The photo is doing that.
That's exactly right.
It canonizes it, and now you have it. Yep. So I thought a little 6-year-old at the time made such a valid point. And so I share that with a lot of my clients too. I'm like, maybe you don't keep everything because you don't have use for it, but maybe you do take some photos of what was, so that when you have a moment where you're having a moment, you're thinking about them, and you can look at the picture and be like, wow, that was mom's. And then everything just comes from there. But you don't physically need the item to do that. So he taught me that. It was a cool little thing that...
I mean, he is for sure an old soul.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I think it's so important. I mean, your memories, if they mean as much to you as you tell yourself, then your memories will always be in your heart and your soul. And I remind myself of that when I feel like I really need to talk to my dad. He was my person. He was my go-to person. He was the best boss and mentor I ever had. He was the best dad. Talk to him a lot because I've been in business and financial operations for the majority of my career. I worked for my dad and younger brother for a very long time. And he always was a straight shooter, and he taught me to use my brain. I remember one of the things that he did when I first started working for them is we went into the conference room, and he brought a yellow pad of paper, a bank statement, a pencil, not a mechanical pencil, the old-fashioned pencil, a 10-key calculator, and that was it. We sat down, and he said, if you can't use all of these tools to help you reconcile the bank, then those machines in the office across from here will never help you do anything. And he was right. Use your brain. Think critically. You have a brain for a reason. The computer sometimes helps to make it easier for you so you don't have to use as much as your brain as you think. It should be used as
a tool and a supplement, right?
Exactly.
It should augment your abilities,
right,
but not be the sole source. And I'm very big on, and that's also an old soul of mine as well. We have to be able to use our brains.
Yes.
And if you're not, and your kids are not doing that, then knowledge has always been power. I built my business on knowledge is power. And that's the sole reason that I've been able to grow my business is because of the knowledge that I've accumulated. And it is power. And if we're in the position where you start leasing that out and using it from all these different sources that don't have you thinking,
right,
that's scary.
Yeah. And they're artificial sources. They're not authentic, real, meaningful resources. I've been back to Chicago a couple times since I moved to Florida, and I remember having dinner with my brothers and my mom and we were talking about a couple of things. And I can't remember how technology came up, but I remember vividly, like my brothers had the feeling that my mom had to just suck it up. And I mean, they didn't say that like that. I'm just using the words that are coming off the top of my head. But that she had to learn and engage with the new way to communicate. And I thought about that, and I was talking to my mom afterwards because I was staying with her. And I'm like, she doesn't. She's 84. She's in the last, realistically, 10% of her life. It is so unfair to ask people whose mental acuity is vividly and honestly not at its peak anymore, and to scold them into saying, you have to keep up. And that's not true. They don't have to keep up. Why do they have to learn something new to be able to communicate at 84 and learn a piece of technology that at that age, the graph of remembering and learning and redoing and practicing will drive a person crazy. Me at 57, I have enough frustration with technology, with all these different apps. And fortunately, I'm able to keep up to a certain extent with some of them. However, forcing a population, and really, I believe one of the most intelligent populations. And that's not to minimize your generation or my generation, my kids, but I do believe that the real intelligence is critical thinking. And the critical thinking, I don't believe, except obviously with my kids or whatever, and I'm sure even they have their faults in this category. But the real critical thinking takes a real brain, takes a real mind, takes real energy and focus, and takes a mouth and ears and a brain. It doesn't require a computer, a laptop, a telephone.
Yeah.
I mean, I do believe that society, we did pretty okay without the robustness of technology. I loved my life growing up without technology. And I remember when my dad got the first cell phone or the car phone, whatever they called it. So I remember this. You had to take it to a place to get the phone installed in your car. And I think that the first brand, I think it was Siemens maybe, I'm not quite sure, was the manufacturer of the phone. And it was a huge honking thing that they had to install it in the center console, and you clipped these two things to release the handset, and the base was, I don't know, crazy glued or something to the emergency brake back then. And he had a coily phone cord, and then you had to put this thing on the top of the car, which is probably the wire. Antenna. Thank you very much. And oh my gosh, you were like top tier if you had a phone in your car. And I thought I wanted to drive my dad's car as much as possible because I thought it was pretty cool, just to pretend that you're on the phone or whatever. And that wasn't a necessity at the time, but then all of a sudden we're barraged with it and tricked into believing that it is a necessity.
We're held hostage by it.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I think it's horrible.
And that's something that I struggle with is the business I'm in. I'm a one-man show.
Right.
Ultimately, if I'm turned off, I go away, you have 15 listings. I can't turn off, right? I envy people who have that 9 to 5 and go home and can turn off, or someone else is there to do the work when you're not there. The technology that we have has been great and obviously has helped everyone improve in ways, but I think that it also has hurt us detrimentally as a society and has taken away from what's really important. And I think that's a struggle that I face all the time. And even now, very much so over the last few weeks, I've been trying to figure that out. And you have a kid, you don't want to be on your phone all the time. You're like a slave to it. And that's why I was saying a lot of my senior clients have been the ones that were like, Nicole, it's Sunday, it's family time. And the first text I ever got years ago about that, it was like, whoa, wait. Really? Is that really true? Can I do it? Oh my God. And then you think, all right, this isn't rocket science. This isn't emergency room situation. Like we're selling your condo. You got an offer. I'm sending it over to you. You have 2 days to review it. We can talk about it, not at this exact split second, but later today. They gave you 3 days to review it. Nothing has to be done right at this moment. And so, yes, I think that my working with the senior population is a way for me to just continue keeping that brand, that simplicity that alive in my life and also allowing me to not lose myself.
I love when I see people just like you and I having a conversation when you're out, if you go out and grab a coffee or lunch or dinner or whatever, and people actually communicating, having conversation and laughing. And it saddens me when you see couples or a table of 4 and they're all on their phones because they're really not communicating. They're not connecting. They're not learning about each other. They're not telling stories. They're typing something so fast with an acronym and not saying the actual word. And one of the things that I love to do, my kids, they roll their eyeballs, but I'll put either my do not disturb on from, let's say, 8:30 at night to 8:29 in the morning.
It's overstimulation.
Yeah.
And the overstimulation causes the stress, causes the anxiety, and I'm knee deep in that right now, trying to figure out how I'm going to reset myself.
Yeah.
Because a huge problem for so many people.
Oh my gosh. I love reading an actual book. I go to the library and take out books. I'm a huge fan of the large print now, so I will only go to that section. I was talking to my mom yesterday because I just like reading romance, bubblegums and rainbows. We were talking about Ellen Hildebrand, and I took out a few of her books, and she was just gushing about how she loves that author. And I said, Oh, if her books are not in the large print, then I just can't read them. But I found 2 in the large print. So I was happy with that. My eyes just, now can't really read the small print. But I will not read anything on an iPad or a computer, like a book or anything like that, because the eyes need a break. One of the things that really speaks to that generation is my dad had an old actual answering machine back in the day. That's what we had. And we would always have to start leaving a message because he never picked up the phone at home. And he'd be like, "Oh, I just walked in from tennis. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Dad, I know you were screening your calls. It's fine. You don't have to be embarrassed." And then the other thing is when I would talk to him on his cell phone, and if I forgot one thing and we had already hung up and I'd call him back, right to voicemail, he would turn it off. I'm like, "Good on you, Dad." Okay, so I wanted to pivot a little bit in the time that we have left and talk a little bit about, I don't know, some of the trauma that you've had in your life and how it wove into really your strength and your dedication and your perseverance to where you are today. I'm very open and honest and know that my trauma and my setbacks in life, I mean, they're all part of the journey of life. Nobody gets out unscathed. It just depends on how scathed you are based on your own personal experience. But I do believe, and we talked about this before we started, that our traumas do have an impact on us to either propel us and to keep us moving forward and overcoming and give us the grit and the perseverance to keep going, and not as retribution for the pain of the past, but just as a reminder of how strong we really are and that we just are focused on one day at a time and putting one foot in front of the other, which I truly believe, not blaming, not portraying ourselves as victims. Can you touch on a little bit about what we talked about before we came on and how that has helped you in your life as an individual, as a wife, as a mother, and as a business owner with your clients?
For sure. So I'll start with saying that I think that the history I had gives me a lot of compassion and a lot of the ability to really look at people for more than just what you think is on the surface, and understanding that everyone comes with a history. But I'm a vehement advocate for pet therapy. I got a dog years ago, 10 years ago, who was Zoe. Everyone knows Zoe. If you know me, Zoe. She came to me from somebody down in Miami, and the lady said to me, and I'll never forget this, and then I'll introduce my story. But she said to me 10 years ago, this dog is destined to do great things. She has a piece of Jesus in her, and I just can't explain it. But I think you need this dog. She didn't know I had an eating disorder, which was catalyzed by trauma that happened at the time. At the same time, all around the same time, an uncle had committed suicide. My grandma passed away shortly thereafter. I had a very close friend and situation in school that literally turned so toxic that I didn't want to go to school anymore, and literally was borderline suicidal and didn't get help because it's stigma coming from small communities where everything is just so perfect. And when
I know that community well.
And nobody needs to know your problem, God forbid, right? There's nothing wrong. And no kid of mine goes to see a therapist. And that's unfortunately, and why I'm such an advocate and talking about the story, is that so many people over my years, when I did open up, told me they had the same thing. I can't even tell you how many people have come to me and been like, "Oh my God, thank you for being real. Oh my God, my parents who didn't do anything because you can't, oh, are you kidding me? No one got divorced. No one knew anything was wrong. Don't air your dirty laundry." Yep. And I think at the end of the day, that created so many situations for people to be in positions that I know people that I went to high school with that committed suicide because of the stress and not getting the help they need. And I think that as a country, we failed our youth from years. The system is so broken from a mental health standpoint, and it is so difficult to get anything done and get help that people are put in a position where, what do, right? So my strength comes from the fact that if I don't know, I got help eventually myself. and then had 10 years ago, got this dog and didn't think anything of it when she told me this. And even my husband's, this is so woo stuff. Like, she's a dog. And she saved my life. That
Wow.
dog literally saved my life. And a lot of people know Zoe, but not everyone knows that story. She is the reason I can show up the way I do today. And through the ability to, I always say that you don't really know love until you can love an animal. And so even when I got her a year in, I was like, remember when that lady we got her from said that she was destined to do great things? And remember when I was in college, I used to go with an organization called WAGs, and we would go with people who had animals that were doing pet therapy, and we'd go to like nursing homes and bring the dogs and everything. And I'm like, I should do that with Zoe. That pet therapy became something we did, and I got her trained. And then after the Stoneman Douglas shooting tragedy, she had been there on Fridays for lunch. And her classic photo, which is the cutest thing, is her lying on someone's lap with 8 arms rubbing her belly, and she's drunkenly getting rubbed. And animals are so pure and real and so appreciative and so simple. And they also are so determined, right? So like, take a dog that wants a snack. You can tell them multiple times you're not getting it, but they're still there, right? And they're just looking at you, right? And they're just so hopeful. They just keep pushing, right? And maybe it'll be today, right? So they can teach you a lot. So I think it's very important. And I've always been very big about your kids are going to be fine if they do what they want to do. And the journey is not always straight and perfect. I was supposed to be a doctor. I was literally at a table with family members who said, has she lost her mind? She's a waste of a brain. And I got up from that table and I said some choice words, and I got yelled at after. I'm like, no, I'll be fine. We have to be better at putting so much stress and pressure and defining what success means, right? So college, right? Some kids are not made for college.
I agree.
Not until a year ago did I realize, through helping my son who has ADHD and figuring out his, what's going on with him, did I realize that he is my mini, and everything I saw that he had is everything. Slowly, I'm like, oh my God, whoa, me, moo. And did I realize that I had ADHD? It was very smart, so no one caught it, and it manifests differently in girls than it does in boys. But I can't read and focus and do, so all these things. When I was in pre-med, I was literally in my dorm room crying hysterically because I couldn't comprehend. I mean, my mind was everywhere. So all these memories that I put on the side burner and never really thought about started to come up over the last year of me saying, holy. So then I went to his doctor. I'm like, Doc, listen, I'm pretty sure the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This is all the stuff that I remembered. And so I was very lucky that in high school, if you told it to me once, I knew it. And I learned it, and I was a very visual learner. I've got a little photographic memory. But when it comes to reading, and you can't go to law school and not read. You can't go to med school and not read. And he was like, yeah, I could have told you that when I first met you. And I'm like, yep, okay. I've been able to compensate over the years for that, and I'm extremely productive in how I do my business, but because I put all those things in place.
Yeah.
I think that it's super important to also, as a parent, just be present in your kid's life and realize that it's not a problem if there's a problem.
That's right.
And you can't fight it. You can't be ashamed of it, because when you really boil down to it, I promise you, everyone has the same story.
They do.
And I think that we just have to, as a society, realize that we have to move past the shame and the stigma and everything, and just be better at getting everyone the help they need. Because like, life is not easy, and we have set such high expectations. And I think we have to be better for our next generation. If it's not college for your kid, because they're not made for college, there's technical schools.
That's right.
There's things that they could do. They'll be fine. But
go to a trade school.
Trade schools, don't put that pressure, because I came out of that system.
And you and me both.
Here I am as a realtor, right?
Yeah.
I could have started this at 18 and would have been a bit different shape, right? You can do things successfully in anything. It doesn't have to be traditional, but I think we just need to keep pushing and help our kids know that there's a space for them, and they also don't have to be X, Y, and Z, and don't have to make A, B, and C.
I couldn't agree with you more. Growing up in the northern suburbs, as people like to say, the North Shore of Chicago, born and raised in Wilmette, raised my kids in Highland Park. My whole life was like that. My older brother is an attorney, Ivy League educated. My younger brother went to Michigan as an accountant. I'm not too shabby. I went to Kansas freshman year, Maryland, then got my master's degree in HR and development. And I've never not worked for over 30 years.
Everything about status
Right,
and what people think.
Like my perception, my reality, which is all that really matters, of that, and then looking at me like a second-class citizen. And I remember somebody saying to me many years ago, "Oh, don't worry, honey, you're not dumb." And I'm like, I know I'm not dumb. Give me a frickin' break. Like, how ignorant of you was the world that I grew up in. Not everybody's house was a mansion. Not everybody had luxury cars. And you found that those people that you knew were either wanted to live a simple life and didn't care about all the materialism going around, you can sense that they had a little bit more realness to them, authenticity. But the living in the bubblegums and rainbows was so artificially inflated because you're right, everybody is insecure about something. And I always encourage people, and I've talked about this, like, just spend more time looking in the mirror. Mm-hmm. Look at yourself. And when you can answer all those questions about how perfect you are and how without fault you are, maybe you could start picking the lint off of somebody else's sweater. Yeah. But until then, like, just focus on your own stuff. And no one is more or less better than anybody else. And you're right, it is unfortunate, the feeling of less than and what it does to your mental health and being is truly unnecessary. Because, like I said earlier, we all are going to meet the same end. Why don't we just all take a little bit of humble pie and go out there and try to make somebody smile today, which is really one of the best feelings that I do every day.
That's how I am too. My husband's like, I take you everywhere and you talk to everybody.
That's right. I mean, when I told my mom I was moving here, she's like, Jennifer, Faith, I'm not worried about you. You can make friends with the table. And she's right, which is why you and I are sitting across from each other, for which, as I said, I'm eternally grateful.
Same.
So in closing, Nicole Miller, you are quite an extraordinary human being, and I adore you, and I'm grateful that we're friends and that we met in a place where we have shared love and adoration for the older population. And I wish us both love and good health and peace and prosperity.
Thank you. Same.
Okay, everybody, you know the drill. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. And as always, don't forget to mind your nest.